Time is 8:21. It's time to connect to Congress, a segment where we talk directly to Washington lawmakers who represent us here in the central San Joaquin Valley. And right now we're talking with a Republican representative for California's 5th Congressional District, Tom McClintock. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Today marks day 36 of the federal government shutdown, a record for the longest shutdown in this country's history. Do you see an end in sight? And if so, how?
Well, I mean, it's very simple how it ends. Pass the continuing resolution. That's what the Senate has to do. You remember your Schoolhouse Rock, that the House passes an appropriation bill to the Senate. We did that way back on September 19th. There were no policy changes in it. It simply continued spending at levels the Democrats had already agreed to back in March so that we could keep the government operating while we have all of the discussions that the Democrats want to have. The Senate then either amends the bill and sends it back to the House, or it passes the bill on to the president. But Senate Democrats, for now, 34, 35 days, have been blocking that vote through the filibuster, through cloture. And they're demanding $1.5 trillion of new spending at a time when our government's worse than broke. We're actually borrowing nearly $2 trillion a year just to pay our bills. So it's not clear to me what more the House can do until Senate Democrats either send the bill back to us with amendments or send it on to the president for signature.
We did see that some of your Republican colleagues, at least 2 of them, were willing to meet with 2 Democratic colleagues across the aisle to possibly work on a compromise, in this case just extending those tax credits for 2 years, placing some caps on income limits. What is your reaction to that?
Well, those are discussions that Congress normally has, but we have it with the doors open and the government operating. And that's the difference. The Democrats are refusing to reopen the government to have these discussions.
This morning, President Trump partially blamed the shutdown for the sweeping Democratic wins that we saw in multiple elections last night. What is your reaction to that and his calls to end the filibuster?
Well, with respect to the election, obviously it was very disappointing. Here in California, Newsom succeeded in installing the most radical partisan gerrymander in the nation, the practical effect of which is going to disenfranchise millions of California voters who cast their votes for Republicans. Republicans received 40% of the vote in the last election. We'll get about 8% of the seats. That's the opposite of democracy. That's despotism. And New York City voters are about to get a graduate level course in the miseries of socialism, courtesy of a Democratic Party that's now openly embracing confiscatory taxes and defunding the police and open borders. I'm not unsympathetic to the president's call for changing the Senate rules. I've advocated that myself from time to time. But I think a cleaner way of doing it is to provide expedited consideration for appropriation bills in the Senate, as we already do for budget reconciliation. That would make future shutdowns extremely unlikely, and it would avoid the kind of hostage taking that we're seeing Senate Democrats doing today.
In talking with some of your colleagues, in this case specifically Congressman Costa, last week or possibly 2 weeks ago, we've talked with him quite a bit regarding this. He mentioned that there's some concern because there have been talks of why not just pass this clean resolution and then we'll talk about funding those subsidies or whatever the future will be of those subsidies. There seems to be some trust issues because they're saying, okay, we're going to hold you to that, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen. What promises are Republicans making saying we will get to that? We promise you we will get to that, and will that be followed through on?
Well, I mean, obviously, there are no Republican priorities in the continuing resolution. That's why they call it a clean CR. It simply keeps the doors open. It doesn't enact any Republican priorities. And frankly, it continues spending at a level that I think is unsustainable. But I'm willing to do that just to keep the doors open so that we can continue to have those discussions. But the question I'd ask of Mr. Costa is, why are you holding the government hostage to a normal legislative process that we're all elected to serve? The whole purpose of that Capitol building is to come together to talk out our differences. But that's in an open environment. It's not when you've shut down the government and are creating massive problems, not only for people who are dependent upon it, but all the agencies are closed right now. So our office is open, but everything else in the agencies is ground to a halt, which means that passport problems, VA issues, Social Security problems, visa problems, we can't do much because the agencies are all closed. Because the Senate Democrats are holding the government hostage to their demands for $1.5 trillion in new spending. And by the way, this is a representative democracy, and the people have been very clear on 2 points. They do not want to shut down, and they do not want to see more unsustainable spending, and yet that's precisely what the Democrats are delivering.
We talked about this moments ago. I won't take too much more of your time, but we talked about this moments ago regarding Proposition 50. Given that again, changes the congressional maps, your district would be very, very much affected by this. One, I want to ask you, do you think, or what is your view on how this measure affects the fairness of representation in California and the broader precedent that this could set when it comes to partisan redistricting?
Well, the precedent's pretty simple. Anytime the Democrats don't like the way a district votes, they'll just redesign the district. The district lines that were just imposed mean that the little town of Alturas up in northeastern California will have its next congressman decided by Marin County voters 350 miles away. Closer to home, little farm communities like Lodi and Clovis are split 3 different ways to get the desired result. And the principal effect is it disenfranchises millions of California voters who cast their votes for Republicans. As I said, Republicans got 40% of the vote in the last election. We'll get 8% of the seats under these new lines. Now, that's the opposite of democracy.
Congressman McClintock, you did mention the city of Clovis. That was one of those that is expressing a lot of concerns when it comes to this new map because it went from just Congressman Fong representing this area to you, Costa, and Fong. What is your message to the people in the city of Clovis now that under these maps following the next midterm election, you would be representing them? What do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, elections have consequences, and I'm afraid that the consequence of the Prop 50 election is going to be devastating to the whole concept of representational government. Obviously, I'll do my best in my portion of the Clovis district. I'm hoping perhaps the courts will step in and say, look, we just are not going to do it this way. So maybe there's hope in that respect that we'll restore the work of the independent commission. That's what protected Californians from these kind of partisan gerrymanders in other states, was our constitutional independent commission. The Democrats have just pretty much wiped that out now. And the result is the most partisan gerrymander in the United States.
Changes instituted when you were representing the area as well in Sacramento. Congressman Tom McClintock, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. Great day. We'll be right back.